Hello everyone, it's another Friday. Welcome to Watered Sea Talks. My name is Tokes. Join our conversation. Now today I want to talk about what is the purpose of an education. Now the reason why I wanted to address this is because I think sometimes generations and generations after you, I think we lose the meaning of some things, and it's always good when the current generation asks us, what is the point of an education? Why do I need to go to school? And I think sometimes we get it wrong as parents in regards to how we explain it to our kids in regards to why they need an education. We explain an education, I think, in the wrong way. We say that it makes them stable, it provides them with money, but really the product of a good education is what gives you that. Now there are people who have been educated and still do not have a stable income. There are people who have been educated to the highest standard and are still struggling to survive, to provide for themselves, to provide for their family. So I always think that defining the reason for education, or defining the reason, or telling our children that get educated so you can, provide for your family, I feel like that's just the wrong context. For me, that is my understanding, or that is the way that I choose to understand it. So in this video, I really just I'm hoping I'm just about 5-6 minutes, because I really want to make this video short. Not because I don't have the time, but I think sometimes when the videos are too long, you lose the purpose of what the person is saying. So why do you need to have an education? Before I talk about why do you need to get educated, first of all, let us define what an education is. Now, I looked everywhere looking for the meaning of education that really resonates with me, and I found one, and the one that I chose was education as an enlightenment, education as an illumination of the mind. When we get educated, we enlighten ourselves, we enlighten our brain. And education doesn't always have to be in the wall of a classroom. Education can be way beyond the walls of a classroom. And I guess this is where I would say my parents and our generation are a bit more different. I think we're starting to think of education as more of outside the box. But I still feel like this generation is asking us, well, I can be a musician, I can be a dancer, I can be so many things that doesn't need an education. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. Because I think sometimes you think of education as in the context of a classroom, but it's not always true. Education is anything, any experience that illuminates your mind, is any experience that illuminates your mind. It is any experience that enlightens your mind. So you want to be a musician, you want to be a rapper, you want to be, you are open to those experiences because of some kind of knowledge, because of some kind of exposure that you've had to this kind of music, and that's why you feel like you want to do it. That is an education. But you need a skill. For every craft that we want, there is an education for it. There is an enlightenment. There is a process for us to gather the knowledge that we need to be able to perform at best what exactly we need to do. Education makes you aware of your environment. It makes you aware of the things that are going on in the country. It makes you aware of things like inflation. It makes you understand things like the price of goods. It makes you understand the interest rates to borrowing. I know you're asking me, you're looking at me like, well, I don't know what all of this means. That is why you need an education. Because as much as we don't need to understand all of these things in depth, you need to understand what is going on in the country. You need to understand what is the meaning of inflation. Why is there inflation? Because inflation is the rise of price of goods and services in the economy. That is the reason why we go to the shop and the bread that we're buying at, for example, 50p is now 90 pence. What happened? There's a 40p increase. You need to be aware of those things because they help you to make informed decisions. That is the purpose, that is part of the purpose of an education. Why else would you need education, you ask me? You need education to be able to understand our ancestors. Because let's talk about history. Let's talk about even medical history. Let's talk about race. It is only through education that you are able to understand what has happened before you and how to deal with it, how to either help you to be better at it in the future and what not to do. But I think the block comes from the fact that we constantly think of education as a war in the classroom, sat down. No, that is not just an education. Some people have an education that way, or well, let me say most people, because that is a standard. But there are children who are raised up, who their parents know that they have inbuilt ambition, and that ambition is not going to be fulfilled in a classroom. So what do? They don't put their children into that standard classroom education. And I'm really encouraging parents here that you need to understand your child, you need to know your child to decide if the purpose or the ambition actually needs the classroom. And this is where I'm saying that we don't have to look onto status quo. We don't have to think about what other parents are doing. We have to look to the child and ask ourselves, what fits this child? Is this child a child that has an inbuilt motivation? They know what they're doing. They know how to push themselves. They have a level of consistency. And so they don't need certain level of classroom-based education. Do they just need to go to this skill and then perfect it in that way? And this is why I'm nudging parents to kind of just take time to understand the kind of education that you can really get the best for them and for their lives, and to fulfill their ambition and their purpose. Again, I'm not shutting this down, because I have heard from, a lot of my niece, nephews, they want to be musicians, they want to be rappers, and there is nothing wrong with those professions. But my understanding or my take on it is that to perfect those professions at its best, you need some level of education in regards to just, management, understanding how management works, the percentage that comes out of your, of your pay when you actually get a proper contract, understanding finances, accounting, money going in, money going out. There is some underlying knowledge and education that you need for everything that you want to do, even as a musician, even as a rapper, even as a, as an artist, even as someone that wants to be an actor. There is a level of knowledge of education that you need. So I don't want us to always think that being in those professions is easier. Yes, the performance of it might seem easier, and everyone knows you and you're famous. But I believe that the people who really thrive in those professions are people who either have the best of accountants, the best of managers, but there's some people in their lives who have been educated, and it helps them to support them to make sure they don't make mistakes. But whilst you have people around you who are educated, I think it is our own responsibility, and to make sure we're accountable, to be knowledgeable about the things that we get ourselves into. So today, really, the conversation that I'm having is for the girls, for children, and for the parents. What is the purpose of an education? The purpose of an education is that enlightenment, is that illumination. The purpose of an education is to be aware. The purpose of an education is to be knowledgeable and not be ignorant. The purpose of an education is to connect ourselves to our ancestors. And the product of that could be riches, could be wealth, could be providing certain things for our families as a product of it. But it is not because of that we go into an education, because the purpose of human is productivity, and productivity only comes from knowledge and an education. So I will leave my conversation there today, and I hope that you've gained a thing or two, and it allows you to kind of think about the conversations that you're having with your children in regards to what really is an education, and you kind of dig deep into the conversation. I will see you next week, and have a lovely weekend. Bye.